Hello there, Lunar Squadron, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have another very exciting Star Wars Outlaws discussion, as earlier this week we posed a question to all of you via poll. When it comes to open world games like Star Wars Outlaws, do you care more about the quality of the open world or the quality of the story? And to be honest with you, the results of this poll were rather shocking, and it got us thinking about what this game will look like once it releases, which led us to do a ton of research into the upcoming post-launch DLC for this game. And to be honest with you, we found a ton of very exciting information that not really anybody is talking about, that has led us to believe that the upcoming DLC for Star Wars Outlaws is way more important than any of us realize or are giving credit for. But before we get into this conversation, if you're new to the channel, we would love to have you as always, and the way to do that, just go down below this video, hit that little subscribe button, the bell notification right on next to it. It'll notify you every single time that Andreas and I upload. And if you would like to take this conversation beyond the comment section on YouTube, make sure to head over to Twitter and follow us at Lunar Squadron, or jump into our Discord server. All of that information will be down below. Now, with all of that out of the way, Andreas, are you ready to talk about the DLC for this game?
Oh yeah, let's do this, guys.
Earlier this week, we sent out a poll to all of you, asking you guys the question about, when it comes to open world games like Star Wars Outlaws, what is more important to you in terms of quality and depth? Is it the open world or the story? And while we were expecting a more 50-50 result, we were honestly really shocked to see that an overwhelming majority of you actually care more about the quality of the open world when it comes to games like Star Wars Outlaws. It looks like some of you just really don't care about the quality of the story as much as you do the quality of the open world. And that got us thinking about the upcoming DLC for Star Wars Outlaws and how we will be getting story expansions for this game once that game releases. And we were thinking about what this DLC needs to do to be able to capture what people want from this game. And Andreas, while they have marketed mostly this DLC as story expansions, there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, there is. I personally thought that the focus of these season passes was that they were going to be extending the story of Star Wars Outlaws and Kay's journey, and that's kind of how it's been marketed to date. If you look on the website in big text, it literally says extend Kay's journey with 2 upcoming DLCs. And that just right off the bat, in the big bold text, you would imagine, okay, this is all a story DLC. We know for one that this season pass is coming with 2 of these, and they will be included with the gold edition of the game. And I assume it'll also probably be sold separately as like a $40 extra. But one thing that I always thought was that this was going to be solely story-based, but if you read the fine print here, it's actually a bit more descriptive than that, and it's a little bit more expansive than I first realized, because if you read right here, it says, extend Kay's journey, keep exploring the world of Star Wars Outlaws with all new stories, quests, and areas to discover in 2 additional narrative expansions that will release after the launch. Nick, again, the first time when I read this, I think my brain honed in on narrative expansions, but it looks like it's more than just a narrative expansion here, because we're actually going to be getting new areas to discover in this game post-launch, which I think I just have to stop and think about that for a second, because that's a pretty big deal, right? Like, when you think about a Star Wars game, the ceiling for what they can accomplish with these new areas is pretty high. You can go to whole new planets. You can go to new cities within planets. For example, we've seen that Mos Eisley is going to be in this game, but what about Mos Espa? Is there a possibility that they could add cities like Mos Espa that people are going to want to see post-launch? And I think this opens that avenue for that and makes these DLC expansions a bit more of an appealing buy for people who just may have thought beforehand that these were story expansions and maybe they weren't all too bothered with the story of this game.
Yeah, this is incredibly exciting for all of the reasons that you said, and this information has been out there for a while. We knew that there were narrative DLCs coming for this game, but I think the focus of the conversation around the DLC for this game has all been about the pre-order bonuses and then people being upset about the pricing and all of that stuff. No one's really talked about what we're actually getting. No one's really dug into that, and that's what we wanted to do in this video. And like you said, I kind of felt the same way. When we knew we were getting narrative expansions, I thought it would be mainly story-based stuff, some additional missions that will help progress the story forward. But reading that we will be getting new quests, which to me seems like open world content, like side quests, and new areas to discover, is incredibly exciting because that's what we want. That's what it sounds like a lot of people want, is a very in-depth open world. And here we have confirmation that Massive will be adding onto it. And this is something that they've done with Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. They have a very similar content structure for that game, almost identical content structure for that game. And we know that the first DLC for Avatar's Frontier of Pandora is coming in just about a week and a half, and it is adding a ton of new areas to explore. And one thing you do have to keep in mind is that is just Pandora. Like, that game is limited to just one planet. They can't just go add other planets. The Na'vi aren't on other planets. The whole point of that IP is to take place on Pandora. It's in the name of the game. But like you said, when it comes to games like Star Wars Outlaws, you could be talking about whole new planets to be adding. Like, we know that we're getting these 5 set locations, but locations like Coruscant could make their way into the game, or other iconic Star Wars planets. So really, there is a ton of potential and opportunities here for Massive to explore when it comes to this post-launch content for this game to really grow this game into something even more special.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, Nick, because that, for one, I think is going to be a good yardstick for us to measure this game against when we are trying to figure out our expectations, because it looks like a near identical season pass structure where they had a bonus quest at launch. And of course, we have a bonus quest that is being offered at launch with this game. If you have the season pass, it's called Jabba's Gambit, and it's described as the following. It says, just as Kay is putting together a crew for the Canto Bight heist, she receives a job from Jabba the Hutt himself. Turns out that ND5 owes Jabba a debt from years ago, and he has come to collect. So it looks like the bonus quest will revolve around Jabba's palace and Jabba and have a storyline there. But these story packs, Nick, they're something completely different. Like you said, they're adding completely new areas into the game, new story onto the game. It's an extension of the story in the purpose of Frontiers of Pandora, and in just about 10 days we're going to see what that looks like with the first story pack, which is called the Skybreaker DLC. And if we're trying to figure out when these things are going to release, I think it's important to look at Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, because the first story pack is releasing just about 7 months after the release of the game, and then the second story pack is expected to release about 9 to 10 months after the game. So if we had to guess based on that release timeline what it's going to look like for Star Wars Outlaws, I think spring 2025 is probably a safe bet for Story Pack 1, and then summer 2025 is a safe bet for Story Pack 2. But one thing that I also want to add is that we probably shouldn't have to rely on this speculation for very long, because Avatar Frontiers of Pandora received a season pass trailer about 30 days or so before the game came out. And so I would really be expecting that Outlaws would get a similar treatment with a season pass trailer somewhere in the first or second week of August, where they will lay out exactly when they expect the different story packs to come out and what exactly they're expecting, at least from like a storyboard perspective, for those different story packs, and maybe even a look into what new areas we can expect out of those story packs.
Yeah, that definitely would be really exciting, especially if Massive continues the same trajectory that they have with Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, and it definitely feels like they are trying to copy that same structure. And one thing that I really love that Massive appears to be doing with this DLC is pushing the main story forward after the game finishes, because other Ubisoft games like Valhalla, their DLC like picked up in the middle of that game, and that's just kind of weird. So I really like, at least with Avatar, it looks like the upcoming DLC takes place like immediately after the main game finishes, and it sounds like when you look at Outlaws, it says extend Kay's journey. That to me sounds like we're going to be progressing the game beyond where the main story finishes at the end, and that's incredibly exciting because it just gives us more story while we wait for perhaps a potential sequel down the line if that happens. I know a lot of people believe that this is is going to be a one-off, but we will at least be getting additional story and missions beyond the main story of that game, and that is incredibly exciting. And one other thing that I do want to talk about when it comes to the DLC for this game and the post-launch content is that Star Wars Outlaws really is in rarefied air when it comes to this sort of stuff, that it's even getting post-launch content, because when you think of other past Star Wars games, this kind of stuff doesn't really exist, especially in their single-player narrative-driven games. Jedi Survivor, there was no DLC after that game came out. Jedi Fallen Order had very limited DLC, and it was more of that arena mode and some cosmetics. There was nothing to push the story forward, no sort of interlude between Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. Now, of course, a game like Battlefront 2 did get DLC for its story, but I don't think any of us were playing Battlefront 2 for its campaign. That was like a nice additional bonus to that game. We all cared about the live service content for the multiplayer. At least I feel like 95+% of us who played that game were playing Battlefront 2 for the multiplayer, and the same goes for 2015 Battlefront. All of that DLC was about more of the PvE and PvP multiplayer elements of that game. Outlaws having a post-launch season pass and story DLC is really exciting, because we just don't really see that when it comes to games in the Star Wars universe. So I'm just so excited to see what these additional quests are, what these additional areas, if they add new planets, or if they add on to planets like Tatooine. Do we get new areas that we've never heard of when it comes to this planet that help maybe spice the planet up a little bit? Or do we get to finally explore locations that we've heard about and read about, but we've never gotten to see? I just think there's so many possibilities for Massive to go with DLC in this game, and to know that we're getting this expansive DLC with quests and new locations and new stories just gets me so excited for what this game will be after it releases. It's going to be really excited to remain hyped about this game once we finish it, I'm sure immediately after it comes out.
I could not agree more, Nick. And before we did this whole deep dive into the DLC, I personally wasn't the most excited for DLC for this game, but particularly now, because we've learned that there will be these new areas that we can discover with the DLC. I, for one, am certainly an open world junkie, and that gets my brain running on all the possibilities of places that we can go. And I think that leads me to a great question that I'd like to open up for the comments for this video, and that is, if you could add any area to discover in the DLC packs for this game, either in Story Pack 1 or Story Pack 2, or both, I'd love to hear both recommendations from all of you, where would you take Kay's Journey to? I, for one, would like to see the Outlander Club in this game, because I just think it fits so close into the Outlaws theme. You have the seedy underbelly of Coruscant, which is one of those hives of scum and villainy that I think would fit in perfectly with the themes of Star Wars Outlaws. And who knows, I think there's also other possibilities as well, like other areas within the planets that we already have, like Mos Espa, that I personally would love to see. I'd love to bet on the pod races, for example, in Mos Espa. So those are my ideas. Nick, anything that you think would be cool to add to this game?
Well, we definitely are Coruscant merchants, so I was expecting you to say that. So I was trying to think of a different location, and I really do love the planet Naboo. I don't know how that fits into this, but I wouldn't mind being able to visit that in another open world setting. So I guess that will be my answer. All I know is I was just already excited to explore the open world of this game and see how in-depth it is, and to know that we will be getting even more once the game comes out just gets me even more excited. I just cannot wait to get my hands on this game and just see what it's all about. So guys, let us know your thoughts down below. Answer Andreas's great question. If you could add one place to this game or one planet to this game, what would you do in terms of DLC? What do you hope Massive does in terms of DLC? Like we said, possibilities really are endless when you have a galaxy like Star Wars. But guys, that is going to do it for us for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.